Top of the afternoon to you, man. I want to welcome you to the War Zone. It's the Cronkest show in social media history. And you know for a fact that I appreciate you taking the time out to tune in because without you good people, I would not have a show. So what I want to do first, let me set my privacy settings because it won't allow me to do it prior to me doing this. So let me make sure I got it done. Change. Okay, so I want to say top of the evening to you. And I come to you because it's almost election time and you got to vote. You got to vote on a variety of different things. You have to vote for governor, lieutenant governor, all these big things. You got to vote on a lot of different judges. So everybody's asking me who I'm going to support, who I'm going to endorse, who would I recommend. Well, that show is coming Sunday. I'm going to do it Sunday at about 7 p.m. and I'll put out all my recommendations one day before early voting starts. And from there, you can take it from there. But I want you to know one thing, that there's some serious stuff going on with the budget for Harris County. And Lina Hidalgo is a habitual liar. Those Republican commissioners, they're not trying to mess up the budget, and they're not trying to decrease funding for law enforcement. That's been Hidalgo, Adrian Garcia, them doing that the whole time. What they're trying to do is stop your taxes from going up. And Hidalgo's trying to bait them into coming into a meeting so that they can have quorum, so that they can pass this BS, and then your taxes go up. That's why I'm telling you, you need to watch these people. So Sunday, I'm going to give you my voter recommendations, and I'm going to tell you who I'm going to support, who I'm going to endorse, and who I recommend that you vote for. So there are going to be some shocks. There are going to be some surprises. There are going to be some people who are upset that I'm not supporting them. Well, why should you care if I support you or not? You don't acknowledge me. So I'm going to make sure that the voters know who are the best people that they should vote for. I come tonight because, I've been an education advocate for over 14 years, and I've dealt with almost every single problem that you can deal with in education. And one of the biggest problems that I've ever seen in my life has been Robin Hood. And for those that don't know what Robin Hood is in Texas education, it's recapture. That's where a property-rich school district sends money back to the state of Texas, and they take that money and they allocate it to districts that need money. I want you to see what they did with one district's money. Well, that one district was the Houston Independent School District. And I want you to see that the money that we paid into recapture, what it was actually used for. Sit tight. Let's do it.
While Houston ISD pays hundreds of millions of dollars into the state's Robin Hood system, La Jolla ISD gets money from it. La Jolla.
Hold on. I don't know if I did it right. Hold on. Let me stop this. Let me stop the screen. So now let me do it again so that I can make sure I'm doing this right. I got to make sure. I don't think I turned it on. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to play this again for you, and you run with me on it. So let's go back. Let's back it up. And I want you to see what they take your tax money and what they spend it on.
While Houston ISD pays hundreds of millions of dollars into the state's Robin Hood system, La Jolla ISD gets money from it. La Jolla has better paid, more experienced teachers than HISD, smaller class sizes, graduates a larger percentage of students, and La Jolla has one more thing: a new water park, and a planetarium, and a natatorium, and it costs $20 million. Yes, this tiny South Texas school district had $20 million left over in its budget to build all this. La Jolla gets 75% of its school funding straight from the state of Texas. Houston gets just 35%. You pay the other 65%. This year, HISD cut classroom funding and is threatening to lay off teachers to find cash to send the state an estimated $294 million in Robin Hood funding.
Is there enough money to pay for it all, Renee?
It's tight.
The reasons why go back to that decision in the 1980s. The decade gave us big hair, charm bracelets, MTV, all totally awesome, we used to say. And in Houston's classroom, the state gave Texas students a fancy new formula to ensure every child, no matter his or her economic situation, would get a great education.
So that kids in River Oaks and kids on the border in South Texas both have sort of a basic education.
Exactly.
Chandra Villarreal studies public education at the Center for Public Policy Priorities. She's one of the few people in the entire state who understands this messy and complicated and decades-old math equation that determines where your education tax dollars go. Flash forward 30 years from when it was designed, and
we are just frozen in time like it's 1984 and mullets are all the rage and everybody's listening to cassette tapes and things like that.
We got rid of those, but we're still stuck with this massive formula, dependent on something called WADA and golden pennies, and pretending that costs to teach special ed or English as a second language or even get your kid to school haven't gone up since Ronald Reagan was in the White House. Of course those costs have gone up, but the formula hasn't changed.
State aid has fallen dramatically. Your local tax bill makes up the difference.
It's either going to come from Austin or it's going to come from Houston taxpayers. There's no way to continue.
I see no other revenue source at all.
But HISD can't keep asking you for more. Even if they raise taxes as high as they're legally allowed to, it would bring in just $233 million more dollars. But because of the formula and Robin Hood, nearly 50% of it would go straight from HISD to Austin, so it could give it away to some other school district. La Jolla ISD, by the way, the Water Park School District, didn't want to talk to us for this report.
So I've been in debate with people all day about this because Fort Bend ISD is about to get tricked into going into Robin Hood. They have something called VATRE, VATRE, or whatever it's called. And they're tying this into teacher raises and putting more cops on school campuses, elementary school campuses. But the thing that they're not telling them about is recapture, which is called Robin Hood. This is my recommendation. And former trustee Jolanda Jones fought vigorously for us not to go into recapture. Fought vigorously. The state, even TEA, cut a deal with HISD to lower our first payment from $165,000 to $77,000. Baited us in. And then the next year, our payment was $265 million. $265 million that our school district had to send back to the state of Texas. And a portion of it went to La Jolla ISD, who took your hard-earned tax money and built a fucking water park with it. An auditorium and a water park with our tax money. And now Fort Bend, they're trying to push this thing through on these people, but you have a lot of people out there that have big voices, but don't have the knowledge that they need to even understand Robin Hood. So when you go into Robin Hood and you got to send all this money back to the state, you're going to have a reduction in force. That means you're going to lose good teachers. Some of your schools may end up having to be closed. Now, I had one lady gonna tell me, if you can't come with the data, I don't have to come with any data. Research HISD, you'll see it. It's there for you. But do you not want to research it? Because you don't want me to prove you wrong. See, in a lot of things that we deal with in education in Harris County, city of Houston, a lot of people don't want to listen to me. But then when it goes haywire, Monroe was right. Fort Bend ISD, the biggest mistake that you will ever make is going into recapture. That's the biggest mistake that you will ever make. So if you're just tuning in, let me show you again what they do with your tax money.
While Houston ISD pays hundreds of millions of dollars into the state's Robin Hood system, La Jolla ISD gets money from it. La Jolla has better paid, more experienced teachers than HISD, smaller class sizes, graduates a larger percentage of students, and La Jolla has one more thing: a new water park, and a planetarium, and a natatorium, and it cost $20 million. Yes, this tiny South Texas school district had $20 million left over in its budget to build all this. La Jolla gets 75% of its school funding straight from the state of Texas. Houston gets just 35%. You pay the other 65%. This year, HISD cut classroom funding and is threatening to lay off teachers to find cash to send the state an estimated $294 million in Robin Hood funding.
Is there enough money to pay for it all, Renee?
It's tight.
The reasons why go back to that decision in the 1980s. The decade gave us big hair, charm bracelets, MTV, all totally awesome, we used to say. And in Houston's classroom, the state gave Texas students a fancy new formula to ensure every child, no matter his or her economic situation, would get a great education.
So that kids in River Oaks and kids on the border in South Texas both have sort of a basic education.
Exactly.
Chandra Villarreal studies public education at the Center for Public Policy Priorities. She's one of the few people in the entire state who understands this messy and complicated and decades-old math equation that determines where your education tax dollars go. Flash forward 30 years from when it was designed, and
we are just frozen in time like it's 1984 and mullets are all the rage and everybody's listening to cassette tapes and things like that.
We got rid of those, but we're still stuck with this massive formula, dependent on something called WADA and golden pennies, and pretending that costs to teach special ed or English as a second language or even get your kid to school haven't gone up since Ronald Reagan was in the White House. Of course those costs have gone up, but the formula hasn't changed.
State aid has fallen dramatically. Your local tax bill makes up the difference.
It's either going to come from Austin or it's going to come from Houston taxpayers. There's no way to continue.
I see no other revenue source at all.
But HISD can't keep asking you for more. Even if they raise taxes as high as they're legally allowed to, it would bring in just $233 million more dollars. But because of the formula and Robin Hood, nearly 50% of it would go straight from HISD to Austin, so it could give it away to some other school district. La Jolla ISD, by the way, the water park school district, didn't want to talk to us for this report.
Now, to add more validity to what I'm saying, I want to show you something. I come with receipts. Let's go over here and let's share this. Okay, so you can see this. HISD, let me make sure I get this off the screen. HISD trustee hopes to derail recapture ballot measure. The trustee that they're talking about at that time was HISD trustee Jolanda Jones. Now, if you know her story, she has a very unique story. She grew up poor. She ended up a world-class track athlete at the University of Houston, and she has been a politician for a number of years. Well, at this time, she was an HISD trustee. And this is what the article in the Chronicle said. Houston ISD trustee is waging a one-woman campaign against the May 6 referendum on paying a costly fee to the state to help out school districts in need. Her Facebook Live video pop-ups nearly once an hour featuring Jolanda at a different radio show or community forum, contending that voting to allow HISD to pay $77 million recapture fee will cost the district billions in years to come. She also argues that it will deal a blow to progress in getting state legislators to rethink Texas' widely criticized school finance system. Jones' perseverance has affected how some civic organizations view the second recapture measure in 7 months to go before voters. That's because they brought it up one time and they voted it down. Then, of course, all the politicians got behind it and all this stuff. So they ended up putting it back on the ballot when people had voted it down. The NAACP of Houston came out against Prop 1 in April after Jones addressed the group. So did Pleasantville Voters League, Texas Progressive Women, and African American News and Issues. Jones says it has been an uphill battle to get our views out, especially as political groups like Houston Taxpayers for Quality Education have spent large sums on mail and online advertising. Sound familiar, don't it, Fort Bend? No one expects me to win. I'm going against millions of dollars. I don't give in just because the odds are formidable, but it's going to be a low turnout election, so I'm going to try to get everyone I can to flip to my side. The issue is recapture, the process by which the state takes money from property-rich districts and redistributes that money to more rural and poor districts that receive less in property tax income. Houston ISD qualifies as one of the property-rich districts for the first time this school year, even though 70% of HISD students come from low-income families and 30% of the students are English language learners who often require more school resources to succeed. Last November, about 60% of the voters opposed paying recapture. That was likely spurred by the Texas Senate to create a work study group to look into overhauling antiquated school finance, the state's antiquated school finance system, Jones said. Representative Dan Huberty sponsored legislation that would provide more funding to schools and would effectively lessen the amount Houston ISD would pay in recapture fees. Austin lawmakers are furious with the district for refusing to pay, according to HISD trustee Rhonda Skillen Jones and Mike Lunsford, among others. They worried it would prompt lawmakers and the Texas Education Agency to strike back. As a result, let me back up. The board voted in February to hold a second referendum on recapture. Voters have two choices at the ballot box. They can allow HISD to pay the state millions in recapture fees by voting for Prop 1, or they can refuse by voting against the proposition. Education Commissioner Mike Morav says rejection of the ballot measure would lead to the state to remove some of the area's most valuable commercial properties from Houston ISD's tax roll to fund property poor districts such as Aldine ISD. This year, HISD owes $77 million in recapture fees and could lose about $98.4 million if the state detaches some of its commercial properties. By 2019 and 2020 school year, HISD recapture bill could be $376 million, the district says, or it could lose $413 million if it loses out on taxes from its valuable commercial properties. Jones argues that detachment would be unconstitutional. We can't debate detachment until there's an actual detachment. No district has voted to detach, so that hasn't been heard at all in the courts. Refusing to pay the state, she said, will continue to put pressure on the legislator to act. Jones also raised questions about how HISD has presented the new recapture referendum to the public, citing a paragraph on the district website that shows HISD could actually gain money through raising property values if voters approve paying recapture. For example, the paragraph shows HISD would lose $98.4 million with detachment, but would gain $66.8 million if voters approve paying recapture. Glenn Reed, HISD's general manager of budgeting and financial planning, said the paragraph is meant to show that under recapture, the district still could see its budget increase thanks to rises in commercial property values, while it could only potentially decrease under detachment. He said that while it is likely property taxes will rise, Under either scenario, residential property owners could be on the hook for more money because the district no longer would be able to collect taxes from its most valuable commercial property. Still, Jones said she would prefer to see the district continue to refuse to pay in hopes that it could spur change or galvanize other districts to join the fight. Some people feel they're being tricked by those in favor of Prop 1, and they are, Jones said. They're trying to win by any means necessary. Now, they said that if we did this, we would gain money. That was in 2016, 17. HISD hasn't gained any money. As a matter of fact, we're in a deficit. So where did the lies come from? What lie did Yolanda tell? She did not tell a lie. Fort Bend ISD, you are free to do whatever you feel you need to do. But those that don't clearly understand how Robin Hood recapture works, you will regret it in a matter of months after you do it. Your high quality teachers are going to disappear. Your enrollment is not going up, it's going down. So if your enrollment is going down, they're not getting more revenue from kids sitting in the seat. So the numbers won't add up. So you'll lose teachers. There's a possibility that you will end up having to close schools. And if you live in Fort Bend, and this is just the real, when I say it, it ain't going to be the high-powered white schools that get closed. It's going to be your black schools. It's going to be your under-enrolled schools that are going to get closed. And it's going to be because you didn't use your thinking. Imagine if Eve had to listen to God instead of listening to that snake. We'd all live forever. But because Eve used her own way of thinking, and she decided that the word of that snake was more powerful than the word of God, we all face a demise. So now the question becomes, for Bend ISD, how do you choose to leave here? You can get a slow death or you can get a fast one. Recapture will definitely give you a very fast death. Your kids will suffer. So if you're looking for data, Tammy, look no further than write down 59, loop around to 610, exit West 18th Street, and see what recapture has done to our school district. Some days, Tammy, you're not the smartest person in the room. I'm sorry, but some days you're not. I don't care if you've been living there all of your life in Fort Bend, but some days you're not the smartest person in the room. If all these politicians are coming out behind this, after they've seen what happened to HISD with recapture, why would they get behind this? They're not going to go to Austin and change anything from educational finance, from an educational finance standpoint. If that was the case, they had 5 years to do it over here. Why did they do it? Why didn't they own up to what they said they were going to do if we went into recapture? Because as usual, somebody's hands are in the cookie jar. Somebody will benefit from this. And I would rather your money, your tax-paying money, be spent on a quality education for every kid in the Fort Bend ISD school district than to give to a goddamn school district on the border that takes your money and builds a water park with it. This is what they did with our money. This is what they did with our tax money. They are doing so bad on money that they had an additional $20 million to build a water park, a planetarium, and an auditorium. And now all the politicians that supported it, that supported recapture, they're nowhere to be found. And we are fighting to save public education in the Houston Independent School District. There is no equity. Help has never arrived. So what makes Fort Bend better? Than HISD? You tell me. Think about it. Vote the way that you want. But if somebody asked me from Fort Bend, I would tell them to stay as far away from recapture as they could. And if the district isn't telling you this and they're lying, acting like you got to go through Vatry to get teacher raises, if you have to go through Vatry to get a cop on every elementary school campus, I would call bullshit from the gate. Money just needs to be moved around. It just needs to be moved around. But they're telling you all that, but they won't tell you the downside to recapture. That's like sending your son on a football recruiting trip to go to college. And all the college tells him about is all the good stuff. That's all they tell him. But they're not telling you the blowback that you're going to get from recapture. And if you don't have enough money, if you don't have enough money to properly run your school district now, how are you going to have enough money to properly run it if you're sending money back to the state of Texas? That's basic mathematics. And in recapture, 1 + 1 is not 2. 1 + 1 means your children are ass out. Until the next war zone, I'm the 5-star general. Remember, all money ain't good money.